Welcome to the podcast ABCs of Parenting Adult Children. Please join us as we discuss parenting adult children and the unique struggles that it comes along with.
Hello and welcome to Parenting Adult Children podcast. My name is James Moffitt and I will be your host. Today we have a special guest, Angie Mizzell, who's joining with us. Hey, Angie.
Hey there, James. How are you?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day out there. I walked outside to let the dogs out, and it's like 74 degrees and no humidity, and sun's out. And after that rainstorm we had last night, I think everything just kind of refreshed itself, and so it's a gorgeous day.
Yes, I love it when it's sunny.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Introduce yourself to the listening audience, please.
So I am Angie Mizzell. I am an author. I am a mom of 3. I am a relatively new podcaster. My background is television news. I'm a former television journalist turned blogger, inspirational speaker. All of this sort of stems from the work I do now, comes from that decision as I was approaching 30 to leave this rising career in television news, and that big decision and then the transformation that led up to that decision and afterwards sort of launched me on the path I am on today, which is just through storytelling, just trying to inspire people to live a life that feels authentic to them and let go of things that are maybe keeping them afraid or stuck on a path that is sucking their life force out of them. So this has been an evolving journey for me, but it has been a nice little ride. And getting to meet people like you, that's how we met.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I have been following you for quite some time now. I remember, Lord, I bet it's been a decade or two. I remember running into you at the Apple store in downtown Charleston. You were buying a MacBook, and I was so excited for you. I was like, "Yay, she's getting an Apple."
So funny. And I'm not sure if it was the first or the second MacBook, but the second one was because my kids were small and I had put like a juice cup, a sippy cup in my laptop bag, and it had spilled and it killed my laptop. So I do remember that. I just don't remember if it was laptop 1 or 2.
Right. Yeah. Katie and I were down there, and I forget, I was buying something. I don't know what it was. And I think we've both been part of the Apple ecosystem, fanboys and fangirls for quite some time.
Yes.
But yeah, I've been following you for a long time, and I follow your newsletter, and I listen to your podcast on your video episode on YouTube. And I'm very inspired by and in awe of your. I can see your TV journalism coming through on your YouTube channel. It's very professional and very polished, and I want to aspire to grow my talents to get somewhere near yours. It's going to take a while, but anyway,
thank you.
YouTube's a different animal.
For sure.
And there's a lot to it, and I have yet to learn. My YouTube channel is just kind of like, I just throw things and stick it on, see what sticks on the wall, and
yeah,
I don't have a lot of organization to it.
I want to speak to that a little bit though, because I feel like sometimes I'm almost fighting my journalistic training I think it's important to be professional and have yourself together on some level, but I'm also trying to be relatable and real and to try to combine those when speaking out loud, when there's a camera. And sometimes, when I'm doing a podcast, I'm just talking into a green light in my laptop and trying to imagine people being there, but I feel like storytelling, it sort of opens that door to helping us become more comfortable. And I really think that's a lot about it. Like, can we just become comfortable in being who we are? And so anyway, I'm just saying with all of my training, and I do value coming across professional, you also want to be authentic and real. And trying to marry those two can be a challenge, honestly.
Yeah, there's a balance.
For sure.
And the thing about video podcasting is that, well, you have a brand. I have a brand. We all have a brand of some sort, and we have to identify what brand we want to put forth, right? And then we have to build everything around it, right? And which you have done a wonderful job on YouTube, I have to say.
Well, thank you.
And, when you're talking about video, you have to have the right lighting, you have to have the right you have to have the technology foundation under you that will allow you to project a good image, right?
Mhm.
And I think you've certainly done that very well. And yeah, being authentic, like I took a test. I'm part of the Podmatch
Mhm.
podcast network, and one of the things you have to do is you have to take a test to determine what kind of podcaster you are.
Hmm.
So I'm a storyteller. I love telling
Yes.
stories, and I have lots of stories, and so I love telling those stories, and I like
Mhm.
drawing that story out of people, and helping them to dig a little deeper and asking probing questions. And I love talking to people because as you listen to their story, you come up with questions. You're like, well,
Mhm.
how did you come to that assumption, or how did you come to that conclusion, or whatever? And
Mhm.
so storytelling is only one of many types of podcasters, but I like telling stories.
Yeah,
So
that's something we have in common. And I love, much like you, helping people draw out their story. And I feel like something I do naturally is I can see the connecting points in their own story. Sometimes people are so close to their story, and I love being able to listen to people and sort of synthesize their story arc for myself. It's just, I think it is so fun, and it is the thing that drives me. That is sort of the deep why, like the having the conversations with people, because podcasting is tough. I mean, I know how to do the technical things, but it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort. And so there has to be a deeper why. And I think I have rarely left a conversation that I didn't feel a little more energized and inspired,
right,
than when I started. So it's really good stuff that we get to do this. And the barrier to entry, there is none anymore.
right,
I had to
right.
go to college and go to journalism school and go break through all these gates, through the gatekeeper so that I
Sure.
could do this for a living. And now we can do it in our house. And I think it
Right,
is so fun. And we can do it the way we want to do it. And it can
right,
be a hobby or a side gig, or we can make it a job or where we have sponsors. But either way, we're getting to do it. And no one's saying that we can't. So I think it is
right.
really great.
Yeah, I think the latest report that came out about independent podcasters, which is what we are,
Hmm.
there's 400,000 active podcasts, if you can imagine.
Yes, I can. It's a lot.
And a lot of people are real hesitant into because and I used to think this. I'm like, oh, who wants to listen to my podcast? I mean, I'm just some 63-year-old dude in Goose Creek, South Carolina. He's gonna be interested in me, right? And there's so many podcasts, and so how do you get your name out there? You have all these questions, and you have this voice in your head going, "You're not good enough, and you're not smart enough, and you're not
Mhm.
talented enough," and you compare yourself to the professionals and go, "Oh Lord, they've got 1.2 million followers. Why would one of those people even think about me?" And of course, that's all negativity and but there's millions of people on this planet, right? And so
Mhm.
for in 400,000 podcasts, when you consider there's 3 million or 3 billion people, or I don't know what the population of planet Earth is, but it's quite a few people, right?
Yeah,
And so there's plenty to go around, right? The
that's right.
podcast the podcast network is not oversaturated at all. As a matter of fact, it's growing. So
Mhm.
anyway,
Well, I'm glad you're doing it, and
oh, thank you.
I think you're
Yeah.
doing good work, and I think your voice and what you're bringing to this space is needed.
Well, Katie and I are both very passionate about children, about parenting, and we have our story. We raised 4 kids, and I at one point, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, I thought, oh boy, we're going to be empty nesters, and then my wife got 2 dogs and 2 cats, and so instead of worrying about our children, now I got to worry about what we're going to do with the dogs if we want to go out of town or something. Right here we going to get to watch the pets.
That's right.
But I'm passionate about parenting because of my childhood or the lack thereof,
Mhm.
and the challenges that I faced as a parent, and the transition that I had to make to break the generational curse of the bad stuff my parents did to me and my sister, and
Mhm.
having to learn how to demonstrate love towards our children, and learning how to not react like my dad did to me when they made stupid mistakes or said the wrong thing, or you know what I'm talking about. So
Mhm.
2015, when Katie and I had 2 teenagers still living at home, I was desperately trying to stay out of prison. And I told Katie, I said, hey, let's start a Facebook support group. Let's see if there's anybody else dealing with this kind of stuff. And we started out with 10 members in 2015. And I think we're up to 1.3 thousand now.
Wow.
So, yeah. And so in May of 2023, I was really getting interested in podcasting. The technology kind of attracted me and all of that. And,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had, some expertise or experience in, parenting, being a parent, and we're all subject matter experts.
That's right.
No matter what our story is, we're a subject matter expert in parenting.
That's right.
And so I launched the podcast, and I said, hey, let's I post all the podcast episodes in the Facebook group. I have no clue if anybody's even listening to them, but they're there if they want to. And I wanted parents to have something to listen to. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize until just recently that most people listen to the podcast story. They're driving around,
Oh,
they're
right.
taking their kids to soccer matches, and they're going grocery shopping or doing laundry. They want to be able to put earbuds in and listen to
Mm-hmm.
the story, right? And I didn't really get that until just recently, because all of my podcast episodes were going to Spotify, and it translated into a video episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then I joined the Podmatch network, and they were like, oh no, it's really all audio. If you have a video that you upload to Rumble or YouTube or wherever, then that's great. But most people are going to be listening to the audio. And I was like,
Right.
so that kind of took a little bit of burden off of me. And I was like, okay,
Yes.
cool. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter what I look like on camera, but it's not that big a deal. It's not like you're a TV journalist and everything's got to be perfect, right?
Well, right. And we've talked about this before. I always listen to podcasts through podcast players with
Right.
earbuds, usually while I'm driving or unloading the dishwasher, doing laundry, something where my mind is on something repetitive so I can focus on the podcast, but also do what I'm doing. But
Right.
having the video component to then put on YouTube and cut the clips of the podcast episode and use for Instagram to promote, it's a
Right.
very helpful thing. But I feel like with the video being secondary, it has definitely helped me relax and become more comfortable and let it evolve into what I imagined for my own podcast. So, but people have different preferences, but I just had to look at, well, how do I listen to podcasts?
Right.
But my children listen to podcasts on YouTube, and I think they watch them. They watch them. They're multitasking. They're watching and listening.
Right.
But I know that I'm not doing that. And I think either most of my audience is listening. So you just want to have a little something for everybody.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, and kids love TikTok. Young adults love TikTok, and they like scrolling their phones and watching these 30-second videos, even if they last 30 seconds. I think some of them are
Right.
shorter
I
than that.
know.
And so they're just constantly scrolling and watching all these multitude
I
of
know.
TikTok messages. And I'm like, I can't do that. I can watch video, but it needs to be longer than 30 seconds. Anyway, to each
That's
their
right.
own.
That's right. There's something for everybody.
Yeah. So as you're talking about, talk about your book a little bit. Tell us about your book.
Okay. So my book, my memoir, Girl in the Spotlight, is a coming of age story that took me almost my entire first 2 decades of parenting to write. The idea to tell a book was sparked when I left my career in television news, that I knew that it had changed me in some way, on a fundamental way, that I had viewed success and my own self-worth and my need to be validated, the outside praise and validation. And I just reached a crossroads in that career where it worked for a while. I loved it for a while, but I reached a place in my life where I'm like, this isn't working. I don't think this is what I want. And I can't see myself doing this 10 years from now. So I leave this career. I did a lot of inner work to get to the place that I could leave. And then afterwards, I had to do a lot of work to reinvent myself, but not in an outer way, internally, to really get connected with who I am as a person. So that book, Girl in the Spotlight, it's almost like two stories in one. I'm telling the story of my rising career in television news, and interwoven is the backstory, the childhood stuff, the things that happened in my past that created a sense of loss and longing, and also all of the reasons that I felt so compelled to pursue a career in the spotlight and then untangling from that so that I could live a freer life and also in a way that I'm still using my gifts and talents. I mean, clearly I'm a storyteller. There's an aspect to being in the spotlight that I enjoy, but
Right.
I had lost sight of gifts and talents, and this lights me up. And I just started making decisions because I felt like I should to like almost like this was living in this place where I literally trapped myself in a prison of my own making, and I had to break free from that. So the story starts the present day timeline, starts right when my journalism career is on the rise. It ends right before after I've left my career and I make a decision that I'm ready to start my family. So the interesting thing is people who've been following my blog for a long time we're like, well, there's this whole other story, this life after the book. But I
Right.
always saw the book as like, well, you guys have been following my life today. You know what my life today looks like, having left that career. Now I'm going to take you back in time and give you the prequel, if you will, of how I even got here, where these perspectives that I have and the way I'm raising my kids and the way I'm just trying to be present in my life and live a life full of joy it all came from the lessons in that book. So, but it took a long time to write because I'm good at writing short form stories and little essays and blog posts. But to try to
Right.
compile things into a story, essentially, I had to teach myself how to do that. I have a broadcast journalism degree. I do not have an MFA in creative writing, but I spent a lot of time learning and working on it and putting it away. And so my book came out last year? No, almost 2 years ago, October
Right.
of 2023,
Right.
and it is still very interesting to be on the other side of having written and published a book because for so long I was on the I'm writing a book side of it. But
Right.
I do say that story and me learning how to write a book, I kind of raised that book as I was raising my family. I still have two younger kids at home, but my oldest was two, I believe, when I really started getting into it and trying to write it. And it was published his senior year of high school.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah,
A labor of love.
for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And so if you spent 2 decades, writing your book and probably doing some research and thinking and rethinking, and I've been writing on Medium for, I don't know, 15 years now,
Hmm.
and, I love to write because that's a way to tell stories, right?
Hmm.
And so I'll sit down and I'll think, "Well, I don't know what to say about this," and 2,000 words later, I've got 6 pages,
Hmm.
and I'm like,
I know.
but that is, that's like half or 3/4 of a chapter in a book, right? So you have
Hmm.
to you really I'm sure you went through a huge learning curve to guess what I'm trying to say is there's a difference between writing a blog post versus putting a book together, because you got chapters and all of that.
It is. I think structure is an issue, and it's a thing that will trip authors up trying to decide where the story truly begins and where it ends, and then how to structure the book around its true beginning and its true end. As we know, it, well, in many ways, life is linear. This happened, then this happened, then this
Sure.
happened. But you also know that if you're telling somebody a story, suddenly the context, you're like, wait, but let me tell you what happened a week ago that makes this part I'm telling you now make sense. And I noticed when I
Right.
started to write the story, I kept running into, wait, but I haven't told them about this thing. And so it did take a long time. And I am certain that I made it harder than it needed to be, but I also believe in the timing of things. I do think so it's two things. I think the book came out when it was supposed to and when I was ready and it was ready. I also think that I stalled and I was frozen by fear and perfectionism and and then it was like my baby. I was holding it close. I really liked playing around with the structure and sliding my note cards
Right.
all around the dining room table. And I'm like, this is so fun. But it's like, but this is not getting the book into the hands of the readers. So I joke with my kids because they were like, well, is it going to take, I think really start to finish, it took about 15 years. They're like, is it going to take that long to write your next book? I'm like, maybe I'll cut it in half, you know? And sometimes I don't know. I have a lot of stories in me, a lot of things I want to tell. I don't know if there's another book. And if there is one, I'm certain I'm still living it. I'm still living the story. And
Right.
so I haven't gotten to a place where anything that I'm currently living feels like a complete, like it needs to be a book. There are other ways to tell it through podcasting and essays and
Sure.
things like that.
Absolutely.
But to have this story, this book was something inside of me that had to be written and it had to be delivered to others. I always felt like I was writing it for the reader too, even though it's very much about me and my story.
Right. Well, I have always found it fascinating that you were in a very upward mobile career in
Mhm.
TV journalism, and I'm sure back then that there were people on the outside looking in, going, "Oh man, I wish I had that. I wish I would love to be a TV journalist and be in the spotlight and be in front of the cameras and have people watching me and recognize me when I'm at Publix or whatever, you know."
Mhm.
So I find it fascinating that you came to a point in your life where you were like, well, this is fun and exciting and I like doing it. But like you said, I don't see myself doing this in 10 years. Right.
Mhm.
And it's like I've been in IT for 30 years and, I was in law enforcement and private security for a good 15 years before that. And so I don't want to say that I feel trapped in information technology. However, there are days I hate information technology and I
Mhm.
hate end user support and I hate, fighting with network issues and all of that, all the junk that's involved with it. Right.
Mhm.
And there are days that, I'll listen to your story or think about your story and go,
Mhm.
why do I feel trapped? Right.
Mhm.
And it's like, I think it's fascinating that you were able to break free from that and go do your own thing.
And it's interesting because you and I have swapped so many messages over the years that I also think about you too, because you have brought these questions to me. I realize now, it just, I've never thought to say it this way, but arriving at that crossroads was very traumatic for me because I did not think that was going to happen. I was on a trajectory, I was building a life, I had a vision, and for me to start feeling like something is off and then me trying to make it work anyway and just keep going, I was further and further trapping myself because I wasn't listening. And I have wondered, I have no regrets about any of that. I think it was a catalyst for inner work I needed to do. It was a catalyst for healing. And I don't know, and I never will know what would have happened if I had reached a crossroads like that and had been a little more healed. Would it have been as traumatic? Could I have looked at the stress and the pressure that I was under? Could I have looked at it all through a different lens? But as it was, I just kept pushing and pushing to where my mental health, my physical health, my emotional health was at risk. And I literally felt like if I stay on this path, I'm going to sacrifice everything else that is important to me. And what finally helped me break free was this realization that the things about the job that light you up, that you're good at, you don't have to leave those at the door,
Right.
but you're just currently stepping away from. And at that moment of leaving, it was the job itself. It was the station. It was everything about that current set of circumstances that I was walking away from. But I also knew if I leave this job, I'm leaving. It felt more like I was stepping into some sort of light. I'm stepping into freedom and I'm going to leave some things that were dragging me down behind, but I'm going to take the light with me. But I take questions like that you would ask me and that to heart because I was raised by this single mom who she never said, you must become a television journalist and prove your
Right.
worth. But she was
Right.
always pushing me to out of my comfort zone to see more for my life. And I had achieved so many things at such a young age. And so it was I was happy for a long time. I'm like, this is pretty sweet. This is a fun, stressful life. But I think as I started to get a little bit older, your needs start to shift. I just started to change internally and maybe want more or something else. And I didn't know how to reconcile that. So it sparked an unraveling, but I realize now how necessary it was for my own healing.
So talk about a little bit about external validation and how that drives you or drives us as adults, right?
Well, I really do think external validation is great. I mean, I just gave a talk this past week. When people nod their head and they're listening and what you're saying is resonating and they applaud and then they tell you that they enjoyed the talk or that it meant something to them. And then they go buy my book. I'm like, yes, that's external validation. But it feels different now because the validation feels connected to things that I'm doing that matter to me. And you have to be connected to what you're doing and why, because there are going to be days when nobody claps. There are going to be
Right.
days when you're like, why am I doing this? And those days are hard. And I just feel like what had happened was I was starting to grow and change, but that external validation, it really wasn't about being famous. It was about how when people approved of me, it created a feeling of belonging that I
Right.
longed for so
Acceptance.
desperately. And I was starting to it's almost like I was still following a very good, worthy need. We want connection and belonging, but I was losing sight of my why. So I think I have a different relationship with external validation now that it really can let you know the feedback is helpful,
Sure.
but you have to be standing on and within something stronger and deeper than that's the only measure. It can't be the only measure. So that's probably all I have to say about that, is that it's a good thing until it's not a good thing, until it becomes everything, because that will wreck you.
I think, when you ask people who they are, 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you what job they do. Well, I'm a TV journalist, or I'm an IT specialist, or I'm an attorney, or I am whatever the label is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, that's just a small portion of your life. That's not really who you are. It's just part of who you are. And, and so I'm sure you've had somebody do this to you before, but spend 3 minutes, give me your elevator speech and spend 3 minutes telling me who you are, right? And all of a sudden your brain's like, if you've never done that, you're on the spot and you're thinking, wow, who am I? Right.
Right.
And so I think the older you get, the more refined and more developed your identity becomes, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the driving factors. You talk about the whys, and that's one of the whys of why I do the podcast, is because I want my listening audience, parents of children of all ages. I think the spectrum's somewhere between 12 and 40, right? Because it's ABCs of parenting adult children, so adult children is 18 to 26, right? But there's also parents out there that have teenagers, that have 12-year-olds, 13, 14, 15, 16, and on and on. And every age brings its own unique challenge. And so I want parents to receive hope. I want them to, because they're in the midst of the battle. They're, they can't see the forest because of the trees, and I want them to be able to back up and to realize that parenting is important, and parenting is certainly a very vital role. Raising children is a very vital role of being a parent. But we talk about self-care. We talk about, hey, you need to take care of yourself too. And it's not selfish to take care of yourself. Body, mind, spirit. Your physical body, nutrition, your emotional, your spiritual, psychology. It's important for especially mothers. I always say this, and I would imagine most men or fathers cringe at this, but I say that women are the primary caregivers in the house. They especially when children are young, as they get a little bit older, maybe dads have a little more active role in parenting, but moms need to know that it is okay to take care of yourself. It's not selfish, And so anyway, all of these, there's like 30 or 40 topics. I sent you the list. There's a lot of topics. Talk about failure to launch. I had a psychologist tell me the other day, he says, I don't like failure to launch because it's so negative. He said, I like to talk about it as being lost in place.
Okay.
Of course, my brain went to Lost in Space and, Danger Will Robinson. Then I thought about it. I thought Lost in Place. So I like that. That's a better term. It's not quite as negative sounding. And so anyway, there's all these, boundaries and validation, all these many myriad of topics that you could talk about when you talk about the parenting story, because you have the parents and the things that they're doing to try to raise a family, and then you have the kids who are on a completely different spectrum they're learning how to grow up. They're learning how to think. They're learning how to become young adults. They're learning how to figure out what their identity is,
That's right.
And so that's a very complex, families are very complex and very complicated, and there's a lot of moving parts, and so my hope and desire is that parents, as they listen to these podcast episodes and they listen to these different stories, that they can find hope and they can find resources and they can find different perspectives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things I love about having people on as guest speakers, is that they broaden my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
They come from a different place. They have a different story. They have a different experience. They have different educational levels. They have, all of these things. So
Right. Well, and I was thinking earlier to something you said. I joke with my husband that I am the human resources manager of our family. And I feel like what I'm bringing to the table, I mean, a lot of things, but I care about my kids' mental, emotional well being. And I also want them to thrive and succeed. And I have standards for how I think they should behave and perform. And I'm constantly getting those expectations like checked up and checked within myself. Am
right,
I trying, because I believe in my heart that I'm trying to help them grow and become who they're supposed to grow up and become. But sometimes I have to challenge that and go, am I really doing that? Or am I still trying to shape them into my own image? I feel like because of what I went through, though, I do have this awareness that I can stop myself when I feel myself doing that. I know that, so I told you earlier that my book ended with this realization that I was now ready to start a family. I brought into my parenting journey already I'd done a lot of healing. So then I thought, I'm going to do so many things differently. And I do think there are things I've done differently, but I was immediately slapped with my own limitations. I didn't know I was going to be so tired. I didn't know that I would start to feel disconnected from myself, and then that I wouldn't be as present with them as I imagined I would be. So that was the first, like almost like a next level of healing, where you realize that the people who raised us, it's possible they didn't do a great job. But they probably did the best they could, even if it
sure,
wasn't the best, because you start to see how we are so limited in what inner resources did our parents have? How
right.
mature were they really? How healed were they? And it doesn't give people a pass for bad behavior. But when I started butting up against my own limitations and work I still needed to do, I was like, oh, I think I'm starting to see this is difficult work. And
Yeah,
when I started blogging, I do feel like some of my main themes, I wish I could have seen it more clearly then, but they were what children teach us. So, what raising them was teaching me, and really just this art of being present to get in the moment. And actually, I do think I spoke to those themes, but I wish I knew how strongly those were the main things. These kids are teaching me too. And the biggest thing I'm learning is to be in this moment with them. And when they were
that's
younger,
good.
it was fun to write about them. They were funny. And I was never, so it was always just pretty lighthearted. But as they get older, every parent realizes this. Oh, now we're going through stuff and I feel so alone. And we don't realize that other parents are going through it too. And there's an issue of our kids' privacy because now they're older. You don't know like how much of this behind the scenes struggle should I be talking about with
Right,
anyone.
right.
And so we went through that also. And I think something that really broke ground in my relationship with my oldest as he was becoming a teenager and more independent. I just said, I've been your age. I know what that's like, but I've never been a parent of somebody your age. I
Right.
am literally making judgment calls in real time. I'm trying to go with my gut and I'm listening to you. I don't ever really know if I'm doing the right thing. So we are just learning as we go here. And I almost feel like that did something to him where he saw me as human and he saw that I was trying. It's like, I want you to have fun. I want you to be a teenager, but I also need to keep you safe. And I see a bigger picture that you don't see. And that was hard, but I feel like there's a couple of things I've tried to do as a parent is when I mess up, I apologize. When I think they're being jerks, I tell them to knock it off because I have feelings too.
Right.
And then I always try to make sure that we have processed hard things when they happen. And I've almost learned that you can overtalk. You can talk about something too much, but I think in just addressing what just happened is better than pretending like it didn't happen at all. So everybody's holding all of this stuff inside. And I can honestly tell you that sometimes I joke, but I'm not joking. I'm like, I just have to give them to Jesus because you worry about them
Right.
so
Right.
much. And
Right.
as they are out of the house, now my oldest is 18 and he's off in college. And I finally had to say there are going to be consequences now that we're not going to be able to save you from.
Right.
Because they have to be in charge of their own life. And then where is the balance of you can't wash your hands of them, but you also have to let them live their life and experience natural consequences. And this starts before they're 18.
Right.
This starts, so that and you can see I have some insight, but I don't have the answers. I don't think I've done it all perfect. I do think in trying to keep communication open and just do my own work has helped because I can tell now if something is just triggering something in me that maybe has nothing to do with them.
Right.
So, man, it is not for the faint of heart, I think is the
No.
moral. That is the moral of
No.
this story I'm telling.
Parenting can be exhausting in so many levels. But one of the things that we've discovered, or I've discovered and revisited multiple times, is that we're all transitioning. Whether you're the parent or the child, we're all transitioning. And it's like you said, our parents did the best they could with what they had. Were they perfect parents? No. Did they screw up? Yes. Did they say I'm sorry when they yelled or screamed at me from time to time? No. And so yeah, it's we're human. We make mistakes. And as we're transitioning, I think parents get stuck in a rut because they think they're so mentally geared towards, I'm here to protect you. I'm here to feed you. I'm here to clothe you. I'm here to put a roof over your head. I'm here, all those things. We're constantly involved in those many tasks, right? And so we forget that just as your children are transitioning from one age to the next and one level to the next or one season to the next, we as adults are doing the same thing. We're growing older. Hopefully we're growing more wise, and hopefully we're learning from our mistakes. And one of the things that I encourage parents to do, you're going to blow it. And when you blow it, it's okay to say, I'm sorry. It's okay to say, after the episode is over and everybody has cooler heads, then you can come back together and go, hey, I reacted like my dad used to react to me, and that was wrong. I reacted in anger, frustration, whatever. And so it's, I think it's important that we understand that we're all transitioning at the same time. And that's what makes that dynamic so complicated at times, because while we as adults are healing from the emotional baggage that we brought into the parenting experience, from our messed up childhoods, we're dealing with that at the same time that we're trying to deal with your stuff, right?
That's right.
And so that can be complicated, and it's okay to go to therapy. It's okay to ask for help. Like in the 60s and 70s, I don't think parents had the resources available to them that we have today at our fingertips, right? And so a lot of parental or family turmoil, like my parents always told us kids, me and my sister, they said, whatever happens in the house stays in the house. You don't go outside those front doors and you don't talk to anybody about any of it, right? And so there was a lot of repressed anger, a lot of repressed frustration. And so today we have a lot more resources, and it's more acceptable for parents to reach out for help, right? And to seek a family therapist, or if you go to church, a lot of them have pastoral counseling. You can get with a pastor or a family counselor within the church, and you can sit down and you can talk about these things, and you as a family can go to a therapist, and y'all can sit to down together and talk about things and work things out, right? And so there's nothing wrong with that. That's all part of self-care, and it's all part of raising a balanced, emotional relationship with your kids. And for your, it's like you said, one of the transitions that adults or parents go through is that once your child becomes an adult, physically that's 17, 18 years old, right? But we know that their frontal lobe's not really fully developed until they're about 26, right? They think they know everything. I thought I knew everything about everything when I was 20 years old. And
of course.
Wow, I was a dumpster fire. And I realized I was just a little idiot running around on planet Earth. And it's by the grace of God I'm even sitting here talking, right? Because I had no clue. I remember coming to the realization that my parents really understood what they were talking about and had a grasp on reality. I remember picking up a payphone. Remember payphones where you had to put a quarter in them?
Yeah.
I remember standing at a gas station at a payphone and putting a quarter in the phone and calling my parents' phone number in Quinlan, Texas. And basically eating a lot of humble pie and telling them, you know what? And I don't know how old I was. I was in my early 20s, and I was like, you're not an idiot after all. Some of the stuff you've been telling me is, wow, it's coming home.
That's right.
And when you're a young adult and it's like you said, the parent-child relationship turns into a support relationship and a mentorship. You're a mentor now, and they've hopefully at 18 or 20 years old, they know what their identity is. They know who they are. They know they have their own dreams and aspirations. And so they're running full tilt ahead into life, right?
That's right.
And life is a great teacher. If they don't get it at home, they'll get it out there on the streets, because life will teach you some pretty harsh lessons. And what is our hope and dream as parents? We want our kids to not have any harsh realities when they get out into the world. We want them to be well equipped and have the resources they need to have a safe, harmonious, balanced life, right? We don't want them to experience the heartache or the harsh consequences that we experienced as we were learning.
That's right. And I think that in trying to save them from that or steer them away from that, sometimes we fall short because we either don't have the tools to communicate that in a way that's effective. And the truth is, even if you're communicating it fabulously, they're not going to listen when they think they know everything. But I think that one of the things that happened after my son left for college is when he truly got to see that we are a safe place, that if he is in any kind of need, he can 100% call on us, even as we're letting him be independent. And then there's still a layer of accountability, but I'm noticing that it's more effective when it's almost like a calm firmness, so that we're not crossing the line of enabling any sort of bad behavior. But if they can't call us, if they can't come home, if they can't ask for help from their parents, who can they call?
Right.
And so we're always holding what seem like opposites in our hands at the same time, but they're really connected. Like, we have to be a safe place. We have to see them. They cannot be afraid to call us because they know they'll get, and I told you so. Even as you're thinking, I told you so.
Right.
You're thinking it, but you realize you have to let them call and be humble and go, I really need your help. And then you help them, but you still hold them accountable to their own decisions in the future. And there's no handbook for that. But that is, as I'm launching these children that I would keep in my house forever, I realize that what we're trying to create is a relationship that stands the test of time, even as they leave the house. Like, I want to be home for them, even as they leave home. And it's heartbreaking.
Right.
I had a friend say, I don't want my kids to live in my house until they're 40, but I also want my kids to live in my house until they're 40. It's hard to let them go, but we have to, but we're still their parents. And that we'll be walking that tightrope forever. But
Sure.
you raised a great point that we're all in transition. So I have carried that with me too. It's like I'm getting older, my kids are getting older, and there will be a time where all of them are adults, but I'm still going to be mom, but
Right.
I'm not going to be dictating the terms of their life and telling them what to do. But if they need help, I want to be their first call. Yeah, so,
Yeah. Family should be a safe place.
Yeah.
Home should be a safe place. It should be a sanctuary, right?
Yeah.
And there's a particular psychologist that comes on my show, and wow, this guy's sharp. He knows his stuff. I wished I'd have had his ear, 30, 40
Oh,
years
wow.
ago.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was talking about how children have the need to empty themselves out. In other words, they have, and that reminded me of what one of my pastors told me years ago about the psychology of need. I'm like, so Pastor, what do you mean psychology of need? And so he was talking about, and I'm chasing a rabbit here. Don't let me go too far down the rabbit hole. But he said, psychology of need means that you have to meet people right where they're at, right? If they're hungry, if they're unhoused, if they're hurting, they need to go to the doctor. People have all of these external needs, right? And if you just wave the Bible in their face and judge them for the sin in their life, but you're not meeting any of these external needs, then they can't hear you. They can't hear what you're saying.
That's right.
So the psychology of need is like Paul said in the Bible, said be all things to all people, right? And it basically means be empathetic, be compassionate. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And so as I listened to this psychologist talk, he was talking about one of those needs is that children need to be heard. They need to be they need the validation from their parents that, okay, I'm going to shut up now and I'm going to let you tell your story. I want you to tell me your story. Tell me what's going on. Tell me about why you're frustrated, why you're angry, why you're hurting, what's happened. And we need to be quiet and I'll give them the space to empty themselves out. And when he told me that, I was like, wow, that's deep, right? Because he said until they can reach the space where they feel validated by you and that they are safe in a safe place where they can talk about what's going on in their hearts. It doesn't matter what you say. You can sit there, you can be like a little chipmunk sitting in a tree limb, just yapping at them. Well, they're not listening to what you're saying because they've got all this stuff in themselves that they need to get out, right? And that was very telling for me and really revealing. And that's not just parent-child relationships. That's husband and wife, right?
Right.
We can't be yapping at each other and not allowing the other person to be real and say, well, why did I do that? Because this is what's going on. This is what happened at work, or this is what happened on the ball field, or, whatever.
That's right. The listening, and it's the same and slightly different with two adults, because I feel like this is something my husband and I are still practicing, letting each other share how we feel without immediately jumping to either the defense or the explanation of like, oh, the way you interpreted that wasn't right. It's hard to sit there when someone is telling you how it feels to be them in the relationship.
Right.
So honestly, my husband and I will be married 25 years in June, and this is something we're still practicing. And then with our kids, so my mom passed away last June. She had me when she was 18, but I always feel like one of my biggest issues with her is that it's, as you said, I didn't realize it until you put it in those words of the psychologist, but I wasn't ever able to empty myself out because me emptying myself out would hurt her feelings. And then it became about how I hurt her feelings. And what I can see now as a 50-year-old woman who has lost her mother is that I imagine it was painful for her to hear me say the things I was saying. And she probably felt like that's a bunch of crap. That's not how it is. But I think if she had just listened and then validated feelings and then also helped me reframe the way I was seeing things. If she could then calmly say, I see that that's how it felt. This is where I was coming from, and maybe it didn't land. If there were so many things, but she didn't have the resources or the tools internally to do that. So the expectations I had of her to deliver what I needed, I don't even know if they were realistic, but in hindsight, I see now that's really all that I needed was her to listen. And not validate everything, but just help me feel heard. And I try to remember that, especially now that my kids are getting older. I'm like, what did I need? And I still needed to be parented. I still needed her to rise up and be the adult and the authority,
Right.
but I also needed to empty myself out. I'm so glad you gave me that language from this psychologist, because that is really helpful. And it's definitely something I'm going to remember as a takeaway from our conversation today with
Good.
all of my relationships, even my husband. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to be on my show quite a few times. Dr. Marcus, I think is his name. So
Mm-hmm.
stay tuned to those specific episodes because this guy is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, we need people like that, right? We need subject
Yes.
matter experts that can help put a light in front of us and guide us in the ways we need to go.
Yes. And more conversations in safe
Yeah.
spaces where people can
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
listen and take what they need and leave what they don't.
That's right. Angie, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you today. I'm glad that you were able to make the time I know you're busy and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and to my listening audience. I want to say thank you for the privilege of your time. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. You can listen to this podcast episode on captivate.fm, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, and Public Radio. I also upload the video version of this to rumble.com. That's a conservative alternative to YouTube. I have not been brave enough to put this on YouTube like Angie has done all her stuff, but maybe one day I'll graduate and figure out how to do that. Our website is parentingadultchildren.org, common spelling, parentingadultchildren.org. If you go there, the website will provide you with my contact information. You can send me a voicemail. Click on my email link and send me an email and I'll respond. Upcoming show schedule is in the blog. Just look for show schedule in the blog posts. And there's a place at the top where you can click on a review button. You can, if you you listen to an episode, watch an episode that you like, leave a review so other people will be interested to watch this podcast. If you're on Apple Podcast, you can do the same thing. While you're listening to the podcast, you can actually leave a review. I'd appreciate it if you do that. I release new episodes every Friday morning at 8 a.m. And again, Angie, thank you for your time. And to the listening audience, I hope that you have a blessed day.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you later.
Please tune in next week for another episode of our podcast on parenting adult children.